In this video, we're going to take a look at a few of the causes of calluses and some of the ways that you might be able to lessen your experience with them, or maybe outright avoid them altogether. Let's check it out. Calluses, a necessary part of learning to play the guitar, right? Well, not so fast. Almost 40 years of playing guitar. It's been my full-time job since I've been 16. I play every day, multiple hours a day, gigging on the weekend, recording for several projects. All this to say that I don't have any. At least I don't have any anymore. So what is the root cause of developing calluses? In one word, I would say inaccuracy. Let me explain. When you start learning how to play the guitar, you pick up the guitar, you probably tried to press your first finger at the first fret on the first string, and you didn't even get that right. It came out as a thud, and maybe for first few attempts it was unsuccessful. The reason for this is our fingers have not been trained to be as precise as they need to be. I'm talking the exact part of the finger that lands on the exact portion of the string in relation to the fret with the exact amount of pressure. All these things are skills that we just hadn't developed to this point. So what do we do to compensate? Press harder, much harder. And this is the root cause of why calluses start. We're demanding more of the flesh on our fingers than really needs to be asked. This perfectly illustrates my beginnings as a guitar player as well. At the beginning, I definitely had calluses. They definitely hurt. And at 9 years old, it was something that I guess I was willing to grin and bear for a while. But luckily, over time, I noticed that that hardened skin, leathery skin on the end of my fingers started to go away. And that caused me to take a closer look as to why. Well, what I've discovered is that as I got better at playing, my accuracy and precision of the placement of my fingers got better, and therefore the necessity to press harder started to go away. So this is something you want to actually focus on, even in the very, very beginning stages. And even if you're a seasoned player, there are a lot of players that I know, great players, they have like immense calluses on their skin. And are they playing too hard? Are they pressing too hard? Honestly, I think everybody presses too hard. Everybody could press a little lighter. Now, of course, I'm not suggesting that every player in every style should have 0 calluses. It's just not reasonable. I'm sure people's skin types, string thicknesses, string height, action on the guitar, all of these play a factor for sure. What I'm getting at is I think every player, regardless of their situation and circumstances, such as what I just mentioned, every player could reduce the amount of calluses they rely on or develop. So I'm going to give you a couple things that you can look for and actively practice to perhaps minimize your callus situation and provide you 0 excuses for having to wash the dishes. One of the first things that you're going to want to develop in this department is a lighter touch. If you press a note too hard, it doesn't change the quality of the note you're hearing. In other words, if you press a note with a very light touch and you pick it hard, it's going to sound exactly the same as if you press too hard and pick hard. But the one possible thing that can arise from pressing too hard is you may actually inadvertently bend the note out of tune a slight amount. That might be hard to hear. But it very slightly went sharp. So the point is that pressing harder does not make the note cooler. So let's just get that straight. You might as well ease up on what you're asking your left hand to do, or right hand if you're a lefty, your fretting hand, we'll just say. Let's give it a little less work. And to do that, we need to press lighter. We just need to learn what it's like to press lighter and drill that into our muscle memory to the point where we no longer really have to think of it. We just have to monitor it from time to time. So to do that, the first thing you want to do is lightly touch a fret that you want to press. So let's say first string, 5th fret. Normally we would fret just enough to get a note to happen. What I'm suggesting here is that we don't fret with enough pressure to get the note to happen. We just touch the string. Yes, you're going to get nothing but a tick sound. Now, if you keep picking that note, start to add a little bit of pressure. Okay, so still you're not hearing a note, still not. I'm adding a little more pressure. Oh, there it is. There's the note. Now let's immediately back off. You'll notice it's an extremely small amount of effort required to go from nothing to the tone that you're hoping to hear, and then back off again. It's extremely minimal. Contrast that to what it feels like when you actually play. Just go and play for a second and maybe you'll realize, wow, I actually press a lot harder than that, and I didn't even think I was pressing hard. This is exactly my point. Everyone probably could press a little lighter. So let's actively work on that. Second step would be, same thing, 2nd finger, 1st string, 6th fret. Right? We're not pressing at all, we're just lightly touching the string, 0 tension in our left hand or fretting hand. Now let's start adding a little pressure. Still nothing, still nothing. Oh, there it is. And back off. Now I would recommend doing this with every finger. In fact, you could start just by going through the finger order. 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. And it's going to sound like a bunch of duds right away, of course. But then gradually add a little more pressure to each. Now you can start to hear the note shine through a little bit, muted, but now, oh, there's all the notes. Okay, now go back to easing off. And keep doing this. Go from 0 to just enough to get the note to happen and back and forth. This will teach you how much effort you don't need to exert, and it'll also illustrate how much effort you probably have been exerting, and that might be one of the causes for your calluses. Another thing to consider in pursuit of this are other things like proximity to the fret. To get a note to ring clear with minimal pressure, it requires that you fret as close to the fret wire as you can without being directly on top of it. Now, most players already kind of know this, but I think a lot of them might have it slip, just in interest of other things that they're focusing on. You can get away with being in the middle of 2 frets. You'll still get a note, but I'm telling you right now, that requires more pressure than being right here. There's not much distance between optimal and slightly less optimal. So if you focus some of your attention on proximity to the fret, while keeping in mind the light touch, you're really going to give your left hand a fighting chance to really minimize the extra amount of effort that you're exerting. And this is going to help minimize calluses right along with it. So all of these suggestions so far have been geared towards just basic fretting with every finger on your fretting hand. But there is one aspect of guitar playing that you really can't avoid. You're going to have to exert, and that is bending. That is going to require extra strength. That is going to ask more of your fingertips than just regular fretting. But let's keep some of these principles in mind. Try bending without pressing any harder than you need. Now that might be a bit tricky because, like I said, it does require more effort anyway. So it's going to feel, you're going to feel it no matter what. But one thing I've discovered is that regardless, the very tip of your finger, and I'm talking about right close to the nail, as close as you can, that part of your finger is already the toughest part of your skin on your fingers. It's much tougher even if you've never played guitar. I mean, it's much sturdier than the fleshy, squishy part that's just a couple millimeters away from it. And most players, I think, do tend to fret more here than they do here. If you keep an eye on fretting as close to the fingernail as you can with bending, I think you're going to find right away, despite the extra effort and force required, it's going to take a lot more time to develop any sort of callus on your finger than if you were to use the squishy part, which is, like I said, just a couple millimeters away. So make an effort to do that. And for all of these suggestions, you do have to be conscious of what you're doing. You do have to be very deliberate. You got to slow down. You have to kind of look at it, get a feel for what these ideas are asking. And after you do that enough, you can go back to just playing. And eventually, over time, these conscious things that you've practiced deliberately will start to bleed into your regular playing. You're not going to have to think about them while you're actually performing, improvising, recording, any of that. But they are going to require deliberate focus for the period of time that you're thinking about it. It might be 5 minutes while warming up. It might be during a break and you thought, okay, let me work on some bending here, and let me watch for my fingertips and all these kind of things. So it does require mindfulness to get these things to click, but I guarantee that in the end, you're going to end up with more skin on your fingers that does not feel like leather. And that is pretty darn good.